Filet finale. Bush gets set for the most important speech of his life as he accepts the Republican nomination for president. 2 for Texas tea. An in-depth look at the Bush-Cheney ties to big oil. We'll show you the Gore Final Four for vice president and fighting the western wildfires. The U.S. may need outside help.
This is the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather reporting from the Republican National Convention in Philadelphia.
Good evening. This is the night George W. Bush must stand here and deliver to the nation the most important speech of his career. Advance billing says Bush will lay out his plans for big changes in Social Security, tax cuts, and some prescription drug coverage for seniors. The speech is scheduled for 3,900 words. That would be 38 to 45 minutes running time minimum with applause included. A lot of people won't want to listen to a speech 45 minutes long, but it is an opportunity for Bush to define his vision of where he would take the country and say why he should be the one to lead it. The context includes the Dick Cheney attack speech here last night on the Democrats. CBS's Bob Schieffer joins us again from Ground Zero in the podium zone. Bob?
Good evening, Dan. Well, the campaign is about to begin. Last night in this hall, Dick Cheney put it to the White House. Today, the White House and Democrats lashed back. And tonight, the Republicans got to hear from their main man, George W. Bush. The new Republican heartthrob, Bush's young nephew, George P., was testing the mics earlier today. He'll be one of the warm-up acts for his uncle tonight.
We are all a little weary of the Clinton-Gore routine.
But the speech that had delegates talking came from running mate Dick Cheney last night, who finally did what delegates had been hoping for, put a sharp needle to the current administration.
It is time for them to go.
That line was lifted directly from an Al Gore speech of 8 years ago, but Cheney got the wildest reaction when he referred to the president himself.
And now, as the man from Hope goes home to New York.
That will clearly be the Republican strategy. Tie Gore to the president early and often.
Mr. Gore will try to separate himself from his leader's shadow. But somehow, we will never see one without thinking of the other.
Republicans cheered, but Democrats expressed shock that Republicans would take partisan shots at a political convention.
You saw one of the most vicious personal attacks I've seen delivered from a convention floor.
He was running against Bill Clinton, and he wasn't running against Bill Clinton's record because that would kill you.
With things heating up, the president's man was on the comedy circuit, defending his boss's little digs at George W. Bush.
Well, I think the president went out and was poked a little fun at George W. Bush, which is not a hard thing to do.
And that brings it finally to Governor Bush. Tonight he gets a chance to take his shots. Finally, Campaign 2000 is up and running, Dan.
Bob Schieffer. And in the final run-up to his acceptance speech here, friends and aides to Bush describe him as excited and anxious. CBS's Bill Whitaker has a preview of this important and pivotal night for the Bush for President campaign.
After writing and rewriting for 3 months, 17 drafts, George W. Bush says he's ready to give the speech of his life.
I feel good about it. I know what I believe, and I know what I want to say. I know what I want America to hear.
He's made hundreds of speeches, but tonight the nation's listening. Staffers say he'll make the compassionate conservative case for change he's stressed for months.
I'm not running just to say I've held the office. I'm running because I want to lead this country to a more generous day, a more hospitable day for everybody.
It's a feel-good message with something for everybody. The compassion often obscures the conservative, but it's there. When Dick Cheney's rigid right congressional votes came under attack, Bush embraced the man and his record.
And this is a conservative man, and so am I.
He's a master of mixed signals. He refused to challenge this platform's call for a total abortion ban, yet he insists he'd allow them for rape and incest. With diversity hogging the spotlight here, hardline conservatives are almost invisible. But when former Christian Coalition head Ralph Reed endorsed Bush, he told CBS News the conservative agenda hadn't changed, just the style.
He is the most electable and compelling conservative in the United States in a generation.
Bush says there should be no confusion. He's both compassionate and conservative.
That's why it's important for people to get to know the lives of the candidates.
And the campaign knows the best chance voters have to start to get to know the Texas governor is with his speech tonight. Dan?
Bill Whitaker on the convention floor. If you look past the red, white, and blue bunting and balloons of these political conventions, you'll see the color of money. Big special interest money fueling these infomercials and campaigns for both parties. But there's also the revolving door from corporate office to elective office and candidates who stand to profit from it. That's the subject of tonight's convention close-up by CBS's Anthony Mason.
The governor of America's oil capital, joined by the head of the world's largest oil field services company for the energy industry.
Well, I think there's no doubt about it that it looks like the dream ticket.
Oil, of course, is in George Bush's blood. Dick Cheney had no experience in the industry when he was made CEO of Halliburton in 1995. But the Dallas company, which supplies drilling equipment, was looking to expand overseas. And the former defense secretary had made all the right friends during the Gulf War.
We really kind of felt we hit the lottery.
Former Dallas Cowboys quarterback Roger Staubach was on the board of Halliburton.
He was so well respected, you know, obviously not in Iraq. We didn't make a lot of headway there. But in a lot of areas of the world where it was important for us to be, Dick Cheney had that respect.
Cheney made millions at Halliburton, but the company also flourished.
He tripled the size of the company. He doubled the employment ship.
He also doubled the value of contracts Halliburton got from the federal government. At the same time, Cheney even urged an end to economic sanctions against oil-rich Iran. We're kept out of there primarily by our government, he said, and I think that's a mistake. The oil and gas industry has pumped millions into the campaign, most of it into the GOP's tank, giving close to $6 million to the Republicans, less than $2 million to the Democrats. But the Democratic ticket has its own debt to oil.
Thank you.
Vice President Gore's largest financial asset is more than $500,000 worth of stock in Occidental Petroleum.
This is not all of his wealth, but it's a big chunk of it.
I'm former Senator Gore.
When Gore's father, Al Gore Sr., lost his Senate seat in 1970, Occidental's founder, Armand Hammer, helped him out with a job and a six-figure salary.
And in addition, he gave him a stock portfolio that paid off big in the long run for not just the senior Gore, but also Vice President Gore and his family.
But this year, the industry is putting its money on the Republicans and two men enriched by oil.
This oil connection really is one of the Republicans' greatest vulnerabilities. Americans this year have been reminded what happens when oil companies decide, for whatever reason, to raise the prices of gasoline.
If the price spikes again, oil could become a slippery issue in this campaign. Anthony Mason, CBS News, New York.
Former President Gerald Ford, recovering from a stroke, is reported doing much better now. After visiting Ford today in a Philadelphia hospital, George Bush said the former president looked great and sounded good. Ford, who's 87, promised to be out campaigning for Bush in a couple of weeks. Still ahead on the CBS Evening News. CBS News has learned Al Gore's final 4 choices for a running mate. Also tonight, the Western fires rage, and the U.S. may seek help from as far away as Australia. And when gears crack, Army choppers crash. Now Boeing will pay millions. It has been another blistering day across the dry and windy West. And with every hour, the fire crews grow more desperate for reinforcements. They're battling major fires in 9 states tonight, fires that have scorched well over 600,000 acres, and that's just the big fires, as CBS's Jerry Bowen reports.
There are hundreds of wildfires burning across the West tonight. Nearly 60 are major, and it's costing $15 million a day to fight them. In Reno, Nevada, fire crews have kept flames from reaching a neighborhood of luxury homes so far. In Globe, Arizona, mountaintop TV and radio towers were spared, but the stations and antennas were shut down so fire crews wouldn't be electrocuted. And in the canyons north of San Diego today, the Temecula fire grew to nearly 6,000 acres. 4 firefighters there were hospitalized after being caught in a wind shift.
Heat, exhaustion, fatigue, topography, and the weather all combine to make this a very dangerous situation.
Conditions are so extreme, manpower so short, the United States may seek foreign aid. Firefighters from Canada, Mexico, even Australia.
Yeah, it is an extreme. If you look at, if Australia was 1 hour away, there would be no question on it. It's 14 hours away, so we're going to assess to see what is the possibility, because we don't want to leave any stone unturned.
Meanwhile, the fires rage and nearly 300 families remain out of their homes in western Montana's Bitterroot Valley south of Missoula. 170,000 acres have burned across that state, and the National Guard has been called up to join the fight.
We'll kick whatever butt we need to get it done.
But there is good news. The 72,000-acre Sequoia fire in Northern California is half contained, and the mop-up there has begun. Jerry Bowen, CBS News, Los Angeles.
A follow-up now to last night's report by CBS's Cheryl Atkinson about a potentially deadly highway threat. Millions of SUVs sold with Firestone tires that can suddenly shred. They're suspected in hundreds of accidents, most involving the Ford Explorer. Today, it happened again in Florida. A preliminary police report says an Explorer carrying 5 people flipped 3 times when one of its Firestone AT tires lost its tread. 4 people, those not wearing seatbelts, were thrown out of the vehicle. Amazingly, no one was killed. Facing a trial set to begin in just over a month, Boeing today agreed to pay more than $50 million to settle lawsuits over faulty gears in U.S. Army helicopters that caused at least 1 deadly crash. CBS News national security correspondent David Martin first reported this story last spring and has stayed right on top of it.
One of the first signs something was seriously wrong came on the eve of the Gulf War when a brand new Chinook helicopter lost a gear and was destroyed by the resulting fire. Luckily, no one was killed.
But that accident set in motion a chain of events which today resulted in one of the biggest settlements ever against a defense contractor.
Boeing, which manufactured the Chinook for the Army, denies any wrongdoing but has agreed to pay up to $54 million to settle lawsuits alleging it installed defective gears in the helicopters. A quality control officer at the company which made the gears Boeing installed, Brett Roby, filed the first suit and received $10 million of today's settlement for blowing the whistle.
I reported this because I was scared to death about these gears.
The settlement also said gears installed by Boeing caused a Chinook crash in Honduras in 1988, in which 5 men who just days before had been hamming it up for a home video camera were killed. Boeing now must reimburse the government for the cost of the lost helicopters.
It's very unusual that the government finds the acts of a contractor to be so egregious that they would actually sue for the value of an aircraft.
Earlier this year, the Army began replacing 143 more gears suspected of being defective. That cost an estimated $8 million, and Boeing will now have to foot that bill as well. David Martin, CBS News, the Pentagon.
Southwest Airlines said today it has fired the pilot and co-pilot of a jetliner that overran the runway in Burbank, California in March. Federal investigators say the Boeing 737 was going too fast on landing. It crashed through a fence at the end of the runway, injuring 16 people, including the pilot. The aircraft was a total loss. Next on CBS, the latest buzz about the Final 4 on Al Gore's list of possible running mates.
For justice and progress.
On the CBS Market Watch, a warning: the bigger your bank, the harder it falls on your wallet. A Federal Reserve survey out today says the largest U.S. banks charge far bigger fees than small ones. Example, on average, large banks charge almost $22 for a bounced check. Small banks, just $17. On Wall Street today, the Dow was up 19, the NASDAQ 101. Now about whose stock is up and whose is down in Democrat Al Gore's search for a running mate. Gore is now said to be close to deciding. CBS's John Roberts has the names and facts on Gore's latest pick list.
It's down to 6 and 1 wild card.
Light years away from the pressures of official Washington, Al Gore is narrowing the field for what he hopes will be a defining moment in his campaign.
People are going to have a choice. Do they want to turn the clock back and go and return to the Bush, Quayle, Cheney years,
Or do they want to move forward, build on our prosperity, build on our progress, continue moving into the 21st century?
CBS News has learned that Gore's shortlist is actually down to 4 so-called new generation candidates, all senators. Evan Bayh from Indiana, Massachusetts' John Kerry, John Edwards from North Carolina, and Connecticut's Joe Lieberman. The choice of a running mate could be aimed to win a state or send a message.
If you're trying to send a message, you might think about John Kerry from Massachusetts. John Kerry is a Vietnam veteran, as is Al Gore. You'd put 2 Vietnam veterans on the Democratic ticket against a Republican ticket where both parties on the ticket chose not to serve.
What Gore hopes to do is avoid the potshots that the Bush campaign took over George W.'s pick of Dick Cheney for running mate. Bayh is a former governor from a state that usually votes Republican, but his vote to ban late-term abortion has angered women's groups. Kerry is a Vietnam vet with 3 Purple Hearts, but he's a liberal from a state Gore should already win. John Edwards, a whip-smart former trial lawyer, has been in politics only 2 years, but senior senators will tout him as a once-in-a-generation whiz kid who can't be passed up. Lieberman, an Orthodox Jew, was a model of probity and castigated President Clinton over the Monica Lewinsky scandal.
2 other candidates who were on the short list have effectively taken themselves out of the running. House Minority Leader Dick Gephardt and New Hampshire Governor Jeanne Shaheen have both said they don't want the job. There is a chance, according to Gore's sources, that the vice president could still reach out to Gephardt or pick a dark horse candidate like former Treasury Secretary Robert Rubin. Either way, it's expected by tomorrow night Al Gore will have made up his mind. Dan?
John Roberts. Next on CBS from Philadelphia, inside the protest ranks. You saw what they did here, but what do they want? On the CBS Health Watch, Slim Fast is recalling more than 2 million cans of Slim Fast diet shakes because of what's described as a low risk of gastrointestinal illness, the cause as yet unknown. Here in Philadelphia, the police commissioner says a core cadre of protesters is moving from city to city and is behind hit-and-run attacks on police here earlier this week. Their next likely stop is Los Angeles for the Democratic Convention. For insight and context, we asked CBS's Phil Jones to investigate who these protesters are and what it is they want.
When more than 400 demonstrators were willing to do whatever it took to get arrested, they had accomplished their purpose by forcing the Grand Ole Party to share the stage with them.
They have to pay attention because this is on the news every night. You know, we're here.
When you finally find these demonstrators and protesters and ask the question, who are they? What do they really want? What are they up to? Even when you listen to the answers, it's sometimes difficult to figure out what it's all about.
We are a group of people that are dissatisfied with the way this country has been operating.
Peter Chung is 22, works as an office manager, and is a graduate of the University of Michigan. He's with the Student Liberation Action Movement. His demands are unending: free all political prisoners, abolish the death penalty, and end the corporate war on the poor. Chung condemns violence and anarchy, but like the others, he's savvy and defiant.
To get the attentions of those people in power, we have to do something dramatic and flamboyant.
Some of the demonstrators in Philadelphia were among the 35,000 who took to the streets in Seattle last November, and the 10,000 in Washington 4 months ago. The Philadelphia Police Commissioner thinks it's time for an investigation.
Somebody that would have jurisdiction, nationwide jurisdiction, maybe the Justice Department, somebody's got to look at these groups.
Where is this going to end?
This is going to end when this country will listen to us. The power is in their hands to end this. It is not in ours.
In 11 days, Chung and many of his brothers and sisters in protest will take their causes to the Democrats in Los Angeles. Phil Jones, CBS News, Philadelphia.
CBS News will continue in a moment. So the hour grows near for George Bush's acceptance speech here. He's expected to stick to his basic agenda, which is to argue that he can improve on present prosperity and in general appeal to moms, minorities, and moderates. That would include plans for Social Security, big changes in Social Security, for tax cuts, and some prescription drugs for seniors. Democrats today accused Bush of unleashing running mate Dick Cheney as point man for attacks on Democrats. Philadelphia's police commissioner says he believes a network of hit-and-run demonstrators is behind attacks on police here during convention week and in other cities. All part of our world tonight. I'll be back at 9 o'clock, 8 Central Time, with CBS News live coverage of the closing night of the Republican National Convention, including the acceptance speech by George Bush. We hope you'll join us. Till then, Dan Rather for the CBS Evening News, reporting from Philadelphia. Hope to see you again soon.
For news 24 hours a day, CBS.com on the internet and on our interactive partner, America Online, at keyword CBS News.
What's happened to the hurricane season of 2000? Tomorrow. Experience CBS News.